We're gonna try to simplify your life today, okay? So, like I explained, we're gonna do 3 things today. First, we're gonna go over all of the different type of frames and borders inside AutoCAD. Second, we're gonna give you some tips and tricks and troubleshooting techniques so you won't waste time trying to figure it out why your borders or frames are not turning on or off. And finally, we're gonna create this awesome command. I call it lazy frame, that basically will toggle all of your frames on and off quickly with a single click. All right, but before doing that, we need to understand all of these different type of frames, as well as know some troubleshooting tips. Okay, so let's start then, if there are no more comments, with the first type of frame or border here in AutoCAD. And this is the image frame. Yes. So many of you probably already know, I added an image here. You know, it's just me, but whatever, it will serve the purpose of this example. So image frame, I have my quick property over here. As you can see, this is a raster image. And right now, the frame, of course, is on. You can see the yellow border. So to turn this image frame off, we simply need to use the image frame like so. And then we have the option to pick either from 1 to 2. To turn it off, simply we're going to pick the 0 option. So once you do that, you can see that the frame for your image will go away. Okay, so that's the first type of frame or border here in AutoCAD that you probably already know, but it is always nice to know all of these type of frames. Okay, again, image frame, if you set it to 1, it will bring the border on again as you see it. Okay, so the second type of frame here in AutoCAD is called the DWF frame. So we don't have a DWF file right now here in AutoCAD, but it is basically a smaller version of a DWG file that we use here in AutoCAD. And it is used by other programs, of course, because it is smaller, so you can send it easily to other people. Okay, so but if you were using it, you will have to use the DWF frame, like you're seeing it right now, DWF frame, and of course set it to either 0 or 1. Again, I don't have a DWF file in this drawing, but it is always good that you know that a way to turn the frames for this different type of CAD file. Okay, so that's the second type of frame. And hey, we have a comment from the chat. Felicia Hernandez, buenos días, Lazy Arquitecto. Buenos días, Felicia, thank you for being there. Okay, so we're gonna keep going. So the third border or type of frame here in AutoCAD that we should know before doing anything else is the wipeout frame. Yes, so I'm gonna create a quick wipeout over here. So, you know, nothing fancy, simply just a quick wipeout like so. So wipeout, you know, if you don't know, it's a way to hide objects or mask anything here in AutoCAD. So that's the wipeout. You can see it here from the quick property palette. So the third type of frame that we should know is the wipeout frame. So if we type wipeout frame, is right here. So there are many options, but again, 0 will turn the wipeout frame off, and 1 will turn it on. So as you can see, the frame of this wipeout is showing, but if I set it to 0 and press enter, you can see that the wipeout frame is now not showing, which is nice. So again, if we use wipeout frame and set it to 1, it will bring the border of the wipeout on. All right, so that's the third type of frame here in AutoCAD. And then let's go with the next one, right? So the next one is gonna be the DGVN frame. So a DGVN is basically another type of CAD file similar to a DWG, but it is used mostly for big projects such as bridges and so on, and other CAD programs use it as MicroStation, for example. So it's always good to know, again, this type of frame or borders here. So again, we don't have a DGVN file in this drawing right now, but it's good to know. And the way to turn the frames on and off for these DGVN files is simply type in DGVN frames. Again, if you set it to either 0 or 1, we'll turn it back on or off. And the number 2 is if you want them to show, but it won't print when you create your PDF or your printing object. Okay, so again, it's good to know DGVN frame. And let's go with the next type of border or frame that exists here in AutoCAD. And the next one is going to be the XREF frame. So the XREF frame, or also called as X-clip frame, is basically whenever you have an XREF is mostly a drawing that you bring. So let me bring an XREF right now, right? So if you open your XREF palette, I'm gonna simply quickly add or bring an XREF. So I'm gonna go here. Just gonna do it really quick because this is not about XREFs, but it's about the frames or borders that we use, right? So let's bring this elevation as an XREF. So I'm gonna bring that and then say okay. So I just brought this XREF really quick. An XREF is an external reference. This can be a DWG, an image, or so on. Right now, this, if you can see it from the property panel, it says external reference. So to create an X-clip, of course, you can go here and create clipping boundary. So if you click from the ribbon, I'm gonna pick the rectangular option and simply X-clip it like that. So maybe I don't want to show anything else but the elevation. So now this is a XREF that has been X-clipped. So the important part here is borders and frames. So to turn this frame or border for this XREF, we're gonna need the X-clip frame. So once we use that, again, right now it's at 2. That means we can see the border, but it won't print or it won't show in your PDF. So we want to set it up to 0. Once we do that, the frame of your border, of your XREF border is gone. If you press enter to activate the X-clip frame again, and this time you set it to 1, you can see that the border is now shown. All right, so that's the next frame that you need to know here in AutoCAD. Let's go with the next one. And the next one is gonna be the Ollie frame. So to explain you about the Ollie frame, let me bring an Ollie or create an Ollie really quick. So let me open my Windows Explorer folder. So I'm gonna open this image over here because that's the image that I have at this moment, but you can do it with any image. So I'm gonna open it with, so open with and paint. So to create an Ollie image, you simply you can use a image program like Paint, which is free. You can simply select all with Control A, Control C to copy, and then you don't need Paint anymore. So here in AutoCAD, you can use the Control V, and then once you click to insert that, you can see that once you select it, it is not an raster image, but an Ollie image this time. You can see it here from the property palette, from the quick property palette. So, and Ollie images or Ollie objects are simply object linking objects or embedding. And basically this means this image is embedded in this drawing. If you send this drawing to another person, you won't find these missing files or path or whatever, because this image is embedded in this drawing right now. So that's the use of Ollie images, but this video is not about that, it's about frames. So let's change the border of frame to a color that we can see better. So again, to turn frames or borders off for Ollie objects, we simply use the Ollie frame. And then again, it's 2 is showing right now. So let's set it to 0. Once we do that, you can see that nothing really happened because Ollie objects are a little complex, a little weird in the way they behave. Even though we set up the frame to 0 to not show, it's still showing, right? So that's why we need to know these troubleshooting tips and tricks on the second part of this video. So, but the reason why it's not turning off is because all its objects need an extra step, and this extra step is to use the regen command to refresh or regenerate the drawing. So once you use the regen command, let's see what happened with the border now. As you can see, the border for the Ollie image now is not showing, which is correct. Again, to turn the border on again, Ollie frame, set it to 1. Again, the border is not showing because all the objects needs to regen the drawing. So again, regen, and once you do that, your border will now show. Okay, so the last frame or border that is important to go over is the viewport border. Why? Because there are many issues or issues that you should be aware of so you don't waste time in the future, right? So let me go over viewport borders. So to explain you that, I'm gonna use this viewport right here. And the way this works is, so right now, this viewport, if I do a preview of this drawing, you can see that the border of this viewport is showing, right? So it's on. Now, how do you turn it off, right? The frame for the viewport. So there is no system variable or command that we can simply say 0 or 1 to turn the viewport frame on or off, but there is other ways to turn it off. So one way is to change the layer to depth point. So once you change to depth points layer, you can change it from the quick properties as well as from the home on the home panel. So once you do that and then do a preview, you can see that the border for your viewport is now off, which, it's sometimes what you want. So another way to turn it off is, let me undo that. So right now, again, it's showing, is to create a brand new layer from the layers palette. So we're going to create a layer, clicking this icon over here, new layer. So once you create a new layer, you can call it viewport. And then you can turn or uncheck the plot icon. If you go over here, plot, if you go down, you can simply check that. So that way, when you place your viewport on the layer that you just create, which is viewport, right? Viewports. Now, if you try to PDF or print, it won't show because you created the correct layer to have your viewport frame off. All right, so that was really quick how to turn off or on the viewport frame. So I think at this point we already covered all of the type of frames and borders here in AutoCAD. So let's go to the second part of this live stream, which is giving you some troubleshooting tips and techniques so you don't have to waste time trying to figure out why your frames are not showing on or not showing off. So let's go over that part before we create our custom lazy frame command to make our life easier. Okay, so let's go then with the second part. And one of the first troubleshooting tips would be to refresh your drawing whenever your frames are not showing. So again, use the regen command. If for some reason your frames are not showing the way they should, either being on or off, so try the regenerate command, right? That's one of the first tips that I will recommend. Another tip or troubleshooting technique that you're probably gonna need is sometimes when you turn off or on your image frame, let's say I'm gonna do image frame, right? I'm gonna set it to 0. So this time it worked, but there are cases where it won't work. Your image, even though you set it up to 0, it will still show the image frame. So whenever you have that situation, a troubleshooting technique that I use that always work is set your image frame again to 1, and then try again image frame to 0. So that technique, I always use it and it always works for me. So try it. Okay, that would be the second troubleshooting tip that I have for you. And the last one, the third one, would be regarding your viewport border or frame. So sometimes happen that, let me put it to depth point layers. So sometimes happens that you cannot select your viewport frame. I think it usually happens on an old AutoCAD versions because AutoCAD already fixed this issue or glitch in the latest versions. I'm using AutoCAD 2022 right now. But one of the issues that I saw always, especially my friends at work, is that you cannot select your viewport. So whenever you cannot select your viewport, it's probably because you have your viewports on depth points layers, and then your layer 0 is frozen. So this is again a glitch from AutoCAD. It looks like in this version of 2022, they already fixed that issue, because even though my layer 0 is frozen with this icon, I can still select it, which is nice, right? But I know many other folks, they have this problem where they cannot select their viewport. So again, if you're having that problem, simply check that your layer 0 is not frozen, okay? And you would be able to select your viewport. All right, so those are some quick troubleshooting tips for working with frames and borders here in AutoCAD. So now that we went over mostly all of the type of frames and borders, we also give you some tips or troubleshooting techniques. The third step is to create a quick command or tool that will make our life easier. And this tool, I call it Lazy Frame. And it's basically a command to toggle between frames on and off for all of your frames in your drawing, right? So we don't need to worry about, okay, what was that name, image frame? What was the other system variable? Only frame, like so many different times that we already went over. So let's do it. Let's create your custom, I call it Lazy Frame command. Okay, so let's do it. All right, so to create this command, we're gonna go over, let me go to model space here. So we're gonna go and use the CUI shortcut here on your keyboard. So once you press enter using the CUI, let me fix this window so you can see better. So this is the customized user interface in AutoCAD, and you can create a command using this start icon. But again, if you already know me a bit, here in the Lazy Arquitecto, we never start from scratch. We always like to reuse anything that AutoCAD already created. So we simply reuse them so we don't waste time, okay? So following that idea, I'm gonna find a frame command over here. So AutoCAD already have toggle frames. So I'm gonna start with this command. And I'm gonna duplicate it, right? So once I right click here, I can pick duplicate. So once I duplicate, I already have a nice icon. I already have all of this information. So I can simply edit it and quickly create my new Lazy Frame command. So I'm gonna call it or rename it Lazy Frame. And this command, the image frame, the frame command, it's nice, but you only toggle or turn on and off certain type of frames, but not all of the frames in AutoCAD. That's what we're trying to achieve with this command, right? To turn on and off quickly everything, basically, only objects frames, image frames, PDFs frames, basically everything. So you don't have to worry about remember commands, settings, or anything. All right, so that's why we are trying to achieve with this new command. So to have this Lazy Frame command always available, simply select it and select it over here with left click, and we're gonna click and holding it, we're gonna drag it all the way up here to the quick properties, to the quick access panel. This is called the quick access. So once you release it, you can see that your Lazy Frame will show up there. That's the easiest and fastest way to have any new command available. Of course, I like to put it here in the ribbon, but that's more complex, and we can go over that in a future live stream. If you are interested, just let me know. But at this point, here is the fastest way. So once you do that, the third step is to click over here on the macro option. So once you click these three dots, we're going to modify this so we can make this custom command work. All right. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to create a macro, of course. So the first thing that we're going to do is erase this over here. And we're going to keep the CC option. Why? Because this is a way to cancel any active command or running command. So we can start fresh, right? So we don't have any problems by using this command. So CC to cancel any active command. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use a DCell expression. So in order to start a DCell expression, we're going to use these symbols. I'm going to use the caps so that way use P M equals and then this. So basically P is simply to it's called menu echo, and basically it's a way to suppress all of these options on the command line. So when we run this command, you don't have all of this garbage information that we don't need on the command line. So it's nice and clean. And simply the M and this option over here is a way to let AutoCAD that we're starting a DCell expression or function here. So, and our DCell expression is going to be inside this parentheses. So that's simply to, let AutoCAD know that we're starting this DCell code, okay? So once we have that, then we're going to use the if formula. So the if formula, again, we need to use this character that shows that we're using DCell expression or macro. So once we have that, we're going to say, first let me write the macro and then I'm going to explain you. All right, so let me explain you. So right here, we're using the if formula to say if, only if the frame, the value of the frame is 0. So frame is a system variable that will toggle PDF frames, image frames, wipeout frames, DGVN frames, either on or off. So that's why we're using the system variable frame. But frame won't toggle all the objects frames. So that's why we need to add a little bit more of code here. But we're saying if frame is bigger than 0. So if frame is 1, 2, or 3 or whatever, we want AutoCAD to do something, right? And what we want to do is, if this is true, we want frame to be 0. We also want only frame to be 0. And then to regen. So again, if frame is more than 0, if it's 1, 2, or 3, we want AutoCAD to set the frame to 0. Also set only frame to 0 and also regen. Why? Because only frames need this regen command, right? We already explained why. So again, let's keep with this code. So once we have that, let's start with the second piece of code. Right. So now we also want if the oops, I missed something here. If okay. So now here with this piece of code, we're saying also if the value of only frame is more than 0 or bigger than 0. So if only frame is 1 or 2, right? Those options, we want AutoCAD to do something also. And what we want to do is set frame to 0 and also set only frame to 0. And then also, of course, regen. Okay, so that's what we want to do. And then otherwise, we want, so if this is false, if this doesn't happen, then we want also AutoCAD to do something else. And what we want to do is set the frames to 1, set only frame to 1, and then finally regen. Okay, so that's our final piece of code, and we're gonna test it right now to see if there are errors or not, so we can quickly fix it. So you have your quick command to toggle all of your frames on and off quickly. Okay, so again, this last part, just to finish explaining, was or I'm going to explain all of it quickly again. So we're saying, hey, we're using the diesel expression. Okay, so AutoCAD knows that, and we're saying if, only if, get bar means the value of the frame system variable here in AutoCAD is bigger than 0. I want AutoCAD to do this, which is set the frame to 0, set the only frame to 0, and regenerate my drawing. Also, if the value of only frame is equal to, is more than 0, I want AutoCAD to set the frame to 0, only frame to 0, and then regenerate again. So otherwise, if this is false, right, then I want AutoCAD to set frame to 1, only frame to 1 also, and then regenerate my drawing. Okay, so that's the piece of code that we need, and we're gonna test it. Would this command work? Let's see, right? So at this point, simply apply and click OK. All right, so we have many frames over here. We have wipeout frame, we have image frames, we have only frames. I believe we have also Xclipse frames. So we have all type of frames here. So let's test our command. So once you click over here, so click. So it's turning on and off wipeouts, image frame, but it's not turning off the only option. So let's fix that. Probably there is something wrong with our code, so don't panic. This is common when you're trying to create a brand new command, but we're gonna fix it. So let's go back to the CUI. Let's find our lazy frame command, right? And the correct code is this. So once we have the correct code for the lazy frame command, let's simply click OK, apply, and then click OK. So let's test it. So we have a wipeout here, an image over here, an only object, and finally an X clip. And if we go and use our lazy frame command and click on it, you can see that all of your frames are off. And then if you click again, all of your frames are off. Awesome.